What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Fantasy Alarm College Football DFS live stream show here with Pete Cole and myself, Dan Servodidio. We are covering this Week 5 slate of games. Me and Peter got you covered with the DFS playbooks over at Fantasy Alarm, dfsalarm.com. And we do these live streams every Saturday morning to kind of get you ready for the day. Mainly focusing on this early main slate of games, but Pete has the night slate playbook and does a great job of talking to you guys in Discord all throughout the day to get you set for that one. But Pete, let's jump into this. First, you ready for this Week 5 slate of games?
Yeah, it's exciting. It's a tough. I thought it was going to be an easy build. I've been building this morning and a couple other guys. It's a little bit tougher than I thought because there's so many guys get the big game, the big Bama game. So,
yeah.
Good questions. The quarterbacks, go both quarterbacks. You go one quarterback, you go value somewhere. So I'm kind of excited to go on the show and actually hear your thoughts also. So maybe get out of my head because to me, it's one of the toughest slates to build.
No, I agree. Well, let's start right there. Usually we start going through, position by position, but I think it'd be doing a disservice not to start with this Ole Miss Alabama game for sure, because a total that's hovering, it's at 80 right now. It's been going between 79, 80 last couple of days, and it's not like Alabama is huge favorites. They're 2 touchdown favorites in this game, so Vegas is at least expecting Ole Miss to hang around enough that we're going to see plenty of starters for both teams for 4 quarters of just offensive shootout action here. I think you need at least a couple players from this game, especially in cash, to kind of keep pace with everybody. Because you think, I know Bryce Young, he's 10K on DraftKings, which is a lot to pay for him. But if you're looking at like Matt Corral at 9,200, that's more reasonable. I think a lot of people might just opt for one of those guys in cash, right? That's my feeling. I know maybe Corral is maybe more popular, but how are you approaching that? Young versus Corral.
Yeah, I started out the week thinking you could probably to make cash in both of those quarterbacks, but it's tough, especially you want guys like Bijan Robinson in your lineup also. So way right now with those 2 quarterbacks, the way I'm leaning is probably going the cheaper one with Corral, and you can't go wrong with Corral. And just looking at Young and just talking to some other people this morning, it's tough because with Young, you legit need 300 plus 4 touchdowns from Young, and if Bama gets to the goal line, it's could end up going to Robinson. So that's a lot of money to pay for him. Hey, if you can get him in, great cash play. You can't go wrong with 2 quarterbacks or that over under. Yeah. But I think the way a lot of lineups are building, it's you take one of them. And right now, I'm leaning toward Corral, who I think is going to be playing from behind. He's got the weapons. So, there is some news with Mingo being out, which may open up a value spot for like a minimum price guy like a Jacquard Pearson or something like that. So I'm leaning Corral right now, and then maybe getting Young in a GVP. But if you can make a lineup of both of them, great, go ahead and do it. But it's going to be tough. If you don't want Robinson, it'd be like Bijan Robinson as your running back, you can probably do it. But it's going to be, they take up a lot of your salary using both of them.
Yeah, there is some value at, not a ton of value, but there is some value at receiver for sure, and a little bit at running back that you can try to make that work. Young and Corral.
And I've done it a little bit, but I just I just made a little right before we came on. I made one was probably more of a GPP, but. And then also, I think there's a couple of decent quarterbacks. I noticed there's one looks like you like at value, and there's one I like way down at value also that you could possibly throw in, which I guess we'll get to in a second. But you want piece of this game. To me, I think you want at least one of the quarterbacks. You want probably minimum 2 of the receivers, maybe 3.
Yeah.
And there's enough value in this game of receivers where some of these guys are going to be very chalky.
Yeah, and the thing with Corral, though, I wanted to mention was that he gives you a little bit of rushing that, Young doesn't do at all. He doesn't give you any. They just don't do that with him. So it's kind of like Mac Jones last year where, he just didn't run at all. Young, they're just not doing it. And he's giving you actually negative rushing yards overall right now.
Mm-hmm.
So with the sacks, I guess is what that is. But yeah, so Corral, Young, running backs in this game. I don't know about you, but I don't have too much interest in the running backs either on either side of this one. I know Brian Robinson Jr. has had like an injury, ribs injury, it looks like, and he's expected to play. Should be out there, but I haven't played him too much this year. Just I know we've talked about him on slates before, but I just think this Alabama offense is so pass heavy, and I think they're going to need to pass to kind of just stay out in front of Ole Miss. And Ole Miss is going to be passing a ton too in their own right. I know. So last year's game, Ole Miss Alabama was also a shootout, but it saw a ton of rushing production from Ole Miss's offense, which is interesting going into this. So I think in like GPPs, you can definitely roll out some Jerry and Ely, Henry Parrish,
definitely.
Snoop Connor, but that's a three-headed backfield right now, and they're all kind of taking away production to trust in cash, I think. Is that how you feel?
Yep, totally feel. Honestly, if there's one player I'm interested in, it's actually the cheap. Well, he's not cheap. Jace McClellan for Alabama. I mean, he started in Robinson's place against Southern Miss. Did really well. 97 yards, 12 carries, touchdown reception. He's kind of like my sleeper of the day. I was even messing with some lineups with him. He's gonna get some juice, and especially if Robinson is limited. But McClellan is probably my favorite out of all of them. If he was a little bit cheaper, I would probably be all over him. But
yeah, 5,900 is a little tough.
Yeah, that's the problem. But I just feel like there's so many points in this game. A lot of guys are going to score. So and just with Robinson being limited. I mean, his last game he looked really well. I mean, 12 touches, 97 yards against Southern Miss, 12 snaps. Florida, 10 snaps, 10 attempts. So I'm not saying go out and use him in your main lineup, but McClellan's probably my favorite out of all those. It's kind of a sneaky play.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I do think like maybe you can, if you really want to get interesting in GPPs, if you're like really stacking up this one, you could go some Henry Parrish or Snoop Connor. I mean, like there's a good chance that one of them finds the end zone just of how many touchdowns can be scored in this. I mean, who knows? Yeah. So, receiver, just to stay on this game before we get to the rest of the slate here. I mean, the Alabama guys are, Jameson Williams and John Mechie are a little tough to fit in, I think, just in cash. I mean, if you're going GPPs, you want to stack up, go for it with Bryce Young and one of Williams, Mechie, both. I think like out of the two, I'd go Mechie just for the savings, and I do think like he's gonna find the end zone starting up soon because he's only scored once, and it was back in the season opener, but he's still, he's still got the floor with the receptions over Williams, so I do like him to bounce back to probably have a better statistical game than Williams, I think. So that's Bama. Let's just stay with Bama real quick. So. The lower tier guys are kind of taken away from each other. The one guy I wanted to point out though was Jaleel Billingsley, and he might actually be popular on this slate just because of how cheap he is, 3,600. This tight end was supposed to start the year as one of the guys taking over when Waddle and Smith left in the offseason. He started out in Saban's doghouse, wasn't playing. It was Cam Latu that was getting the start over him at tight end. But Billingsley is just like, he's very athletic and he's very good, I think. So I think that he should be playing a lot more going forward. And last week, it was Southern Miss, but he had 5 for 105 and a touchdown. But he was out there with the starters. He was, getting targets from Bryce Young. So I think that's a good sign that he's going to be starting to play more with the ones. And maybe that was kind of like the tune-up to get him ready for this matchup, playing more with the starters, I would hope. So, 3,600 is very cheap, right?
Yeah, I think, and if watching the games, the offense is definitely better with Billingsley in the game. And I think he's gonna end up being high owned at 3.6 because people are gonna see that price. They're gonna see the over under. Like I said, touchdowns back to back games, to 5 for 105 last week at the doghouse. And he's sub 4K. So Billingsley is probably, to me, the most popular play and probably the best play there. I just saw a stat actually about the running, not to change the subject, but last year, Ole Miss in the same game, I know it's 2 different years, but they actually ran a crap out of the ball. They had 2 runners over, I think it was 120 yards. And then we saw what Florida did last week, or 2 weeks ago, where they ran all over Bama. Yeah, I think it's like 168 yards, 3 touchdowns. I'm not saying go out and use, because I wouldn't know which one of these running backs to use. But just something else out there for GBPs that maybe, some of these Ole Miss running backs may be a way to go GPs, even though we're kind of off them for cash. But I didn't mean to change the subject, but I saw that stat just jumped out at me as we were talking. So
no, I mean, we're just covering this game from every angle right now. So I like that. I mean, yeah, like in GPPs, I wouldn't be surprised if one of these running backs had a massive game, just with the high total. How many touchdowns are going to be scored in this? Like it's easy that they get down. Ole Miss gets down in the red zone or near the goal line, and it's Snoop Connor scoring twice. That kind of thing. So and with the yardage too going along with it. But go back to these receivers. So with Ole Miss, you mentioned Mingo is out, broken foot, and be careful because on DraftKings it's not coming up. No note on that, but Mingo is out, so do not roster him. At least that's the reports we've gotten. Watch him just be out there starting. But anyway, so moving past him, I mean, Ole Miss has Drummond, who is like the top guy for them. He's their one. Then it's Braylon Sanders, who's probably going to end up being very popular now that Mingo is out, I would think. 4,800 for Sanders. Down from there, it gets a little muddy as to who you might play, and that's why I think Sanders is probably going to end up being very popular.
Yeah, of course, Drummond's going to have a bigger role than he's even had. Sanders is going to get more targets. 4,800 is too cheap. And then to me, it comes down to, I even toyed with him in some cash games, but it's a big chance. And Ja'Cory Pearson at 3K. And I think Drummond may get pushed to the outside. And Pearson's a stud. So, I mean, he's got good pedigree. He's a good receiver. He just hasn't played that much. But if he gets, that's almost a free square there at 3K. He's only seen 4 targets on the year. Last week saw 1 target, 1 reception. Week 4, 2 targets, 1 reception. I think of what I'm seeing, and I could be wrong, but I think Pearson is pretty much the next man up. But so that's not the gospel either. But at 3K, you're really, to me, it's a smart risk you're taking in some ways at 3K. But because there's no way is Drummond and Sanders going to get every single ball in an 80 over under game. Yeah. Pearson's my sneaky play, but he can bring 1 target also. So I just wish I could find out more on the WR3 in this game.
Yeah, I mean that might be a case where you take that chance. It could pay off big time. It could also just end up being someone else from this receiving core that might not even be rostered much, so it might not even hurt you. So it's kind of like you have to weigh that risk reward kind of thing. But yeah, min price for Pearson's very. I mean, it's kind of a low risk, I would say. Obviously, right. If you're going, him versus like Billingsley, for 3.6 versus mid price, you're taking a shot just for one of them to score a touchdown, which is a good chance one of them actually gets in. But yeah, with Ole Miss, it's like Mingo's targets are just I want to get your take on Drummond real quick, just of like how safe do you think he is for cash? Part of me thinks that Alabama is going to really try to take him out and force Ole Miss to go elsewhere, which might leave Sanders getting a ton of extra targets, Pearson or some of these other guys, or maybe Ole Miss runs it more. I just think now Ole Miss has one proven guy, before it was Mingo and Drummond. Now that it's just Drummond being the clear top playmaker in this offense, I mean, wouldn't you think Alabama would try to double him at times.
Yeah, and definitely. And I mean, Drummond's got. I mean, even though everybody likes Mingo, Drummond is the clear-cut WR1 on this team. Looks like he's had at least 9 targets in 3 straight. So,
yeah,
and the salary is going to push people away. But I do think you're right. I think the smarter play is Sanders because Drummond is going to get all the attention on this Bama defense. So
yeah,
that's what's going to make Sanders popular also. So to me, Drummond's a great GPP play, but I do think he's going to be a lower almost at that price. But Sanders is a smarter play. You're right, because he's going to get all the attention.
Yeah,
there's no doubt. You know, I mean, and there's other guys like J.R. Plumlee also, right? Plumlee. I mean, this
former
is the type
quarterback,
of game.
John Reed.
Yeah,
Plumlee.
but somebody's going to all of a sudden somebody's going to pop up and have 2 touchdowns.
Yep.
I'm like, oh shit, we never even thought of him.
Yep.
And like Plumlee, at the beginning of the year, we played that showdown, and Plumlee was like the poster boy of all the value plays in that first showdown of the year. And I don't think I'm not even sure if he got how many. He only had like maybe 2 or 3 targets in that Louisville game, but he's the type of guy where he could jump up today. So Edwards is the play. I mean, Sanders is the play to me because of the price, but he's gonna be chalky. He's gonna be popular. And if you have the money, then go to Drummond to be different. But I just don't think you can in cash with the big quarterbacks and a couple of the high price running backs on the slate.
Yeah, I mean, he might end up being popular anyway, just from like the casual, players that are just like, all right, I'm gonna play the best players in this Ole Miss Alabama game, and
right.
Drummond will be one of those names that they put in. So I could see him being kind of popular, but I think it's, like you were saying, smarter move is to go Sanders, and Sanders is probably going to see a lot more roster percentage, I think. So,
and Drummond's kind of stepped into that Elijah Moore role, in the But I do like that. I do like
him as a player, Drummond, but
And I think Bama may have some problems matching up with him in that slot.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think though it's gonna be tough to get it. It's gonna be tough to get him in there. And Sanders is really the play, a smart play for cash.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, especially if you want some of these. We're going to talk about it in a second here, but you're like these high priced running backs. If you want 1 or 2 of these guys, you're gonna have to pay down at receiver. That's just like the
no doubt
the facts of it. So, all right, well, let's get into running back here. The position is. It has got a couple top names up at top. As I said before, not a ton of value in my opinion, but we'll get to some of those in a second. I mean, Bijan Robinson and Tyler Beatty at the top are for sure like the top 2 plays at running back if you're paying up. Robinson's just a little bit more expensive, but I think both are very good plays on the slate. Robinson, the TCU defense is probably a little bit more shaky, in my opinion, than Tennessee's defense if we're talking matchup. But, I mean, which way are you going in cash, GPP, or are you going down from there, not rostering any of those guys?
The way I'm looking at it, if I'm not going to use both quarterbacks, if I'm not going to go Young Corral, I think I need Bijan Robinson in my lineup at 8,700. I mean, he's the most first dog black in the slate.
Yep.
You do have the problem with Rashawn, and they're vulturing for him. That's the only downside. But TCO got killed last week on the ground. I think Robinson is the play. If I can get Tyler Body in there, great, because the game script. But man, there's a lot of these guys. Like, I love Mayan Williams' price of $5K. I'm a huge Letty Brown guy. I still think Letty Brown is too cheap against a bad Tech defense.
Yeah.
So I think if you can get 2 these decent price running backs and then drop all the way down to somebody, somebody cheaper, I think what the kid from Tennessee, you should be doing all right. But I think you want at least one of Robinson, Body, or Brown. If I can get Robinson and Body in, great. But Tyler Body is expensive also at 82.
Yeah, he's maybe a little bit too expensive. I mean, the what he does is like the receiving, the pass catching is one of the best in college football right now. Is like a pass catching running back with an actual reasonable floor as a receiver. In addition to what he does, as the lead back for Mizzou.
32 fantasy points a game. That's a lot. I mean, that's pretty good numbers.
Yeah. I mean, and Robinson, I mean, he so only 2 games. All right, so I'm looking at their game logs, but the one game was against Rice, so we'll just throw that out. But he had 2 for 54 and a touchdown, and 4 for 73 and a touchdown receiving wise in 2 games that were closer. I mean, he had some receiving too. So I think I just think he and we'll get to Xavier Worthy in a little bit, but like those two are like the top playmakers in this Longhorns offense, and I just think like they're gonna try to get the ball in their hands as much as possible. And I think on the road, at TCU, where Texas is only 5 point or 4.5 point favorites right now. It's going to be a close enough game where Robinson's probably going to get 20 plus touches and get a healthy amount of work here. So
to me, he's a near a must play on this slate. I think it's honestly the one I'm looking at it. I mean, it's a great matchup. TCU, they were shredded for 350 yards last week, 2 touchdowns on the ground. They were missing some players in the front seven, but still, this is the dead last explosive rush rate, which is percentage of attempts of 10 or more yards, 22%. So, and they got killed last week. So, on the ground, I think Robinson is the play. I mean, I think he's got to be in your cash lineup. He's a core play.
Okay.
The more I'm looking at, I love Body. I love his numbers, but with a close game, Robinson's going to be in the game the whole time. I think he should be fine. I think you got to give him your lineup 8,700.
All right, and going down from there, we got Letty Brown, as you mentioned. I think C.J. Verdell is a great play against Stanford. Maybe just GPP, though, because he does split work with Dye in the backfield, and Anthony Brown also takes away some, red zone opportunities there. But Verdell he had a massive game against Ohio State, and he could have a huge game again against Stanford's defense, which is very bad against the run this year. And Oregon's only 8-point favorites in that game, so I think we'll see enough from him that you can kind of trust that he'll be in there for most of the game. It's just a matter of how many carries he gets, how much he splits with Travis Dye, and who's getting the touchdowns in the Oregon offense, which is always a guessing game, I think, right now, because of they have a dual threat there in Anthony Brown. Letty Brown's a great play, I think, for sure. Texas Tech got roasted last week against Bijan Robinson, who we were just talking about, and Letty Brown could definitely do the same thing. And 6,900 is very affordable, just comparatively to the top tier running backs here. Going through just like guys to consider. I think Jerome Ford, Keontae Ingram, Travion Henderson are all they're all in the same range, and I think they're all in play. Maybe just GPP tournaments here, but. Like Ford, the Notre Dame defense has been bad against the run for most of the year. Not last week against Wisconsin, but Ford and Ritter could just tear them up, honestly, and just go back and forth. I think it's just GPP because Ritter could be the guy getting the touchdowns for them.
Right.
Ingram, though, I mean, it looks like under this new coaching staff, he's getting more work and more of the lead back work. And, before it was just him and Malapeye who were splitting work. But Ingram's talented enough that I think he's worth a shot. And Colorado doesn't scare me at all. And Henderson, real quick with Henderson, what I was going to say is he just splits work with 3 guys, Master Teague and Williams are still in the mix there. So I know they're trying to work Henderson in as the lead guy, but it's hard to trust for me until we see more evidence of it. But I mean, he could easily have a massive game like he's already done this year. So
definitely,
yeah. How do you feel about all that kind of mid, the high range, but kind of that mid tier, the 6Ks?
I have, I have probably more interest than I should in Keontae Ingram. Now we knew going into this, we knew going into the season that they were going to use 2 running backs, a 1A and a 1B. But then you look, finally, he got his first start last weekend, and he took the first 10 handoffs. And when it was all said and done, he carried the ball 14 times of their 18 designated run plays. He was on the field for 49 players compared to Malapi's 29. So we know Malapi's the guy there. He's a veteran, but I really think Ingram is slowly becoming the featured back in that offense. So I do like Ingram, so maybe more than I should, because it's probably more of a GPP play, but he's there. Did you mention, and I've been stuck all week on, did you mention Kai Williams at 5K?
Not yet. I was going to get to him in a second.
Okay.
But
He's like my other one, but there's the Ford, Jerome Ford. I think it's a tough matchup, but once again, he's a workhorse. So to me, these guys are like all the same. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
with Burdell, you get the two-headed monster. Ty Evans, you do want to pick on the Missouri defense, but he's gonna share carries with Small. Evans probably the better back, but it's a kind of convoluted bunch there. That's why I said I might drop all the way down to like a Kyron.
Yeah, well, let's talk about Kyron. The price is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, you see that, right?
Yeah, the for like the talent that he has at running back and like the role that he still has as Notre Dame's lead guy, who has a ton of involvement in the passing game. Last week was like a weird game. I think Wisconsin Notre Dame, like Wisconsin's run defense is very legit, and he had 33 rushing yards on 18 carries. Just had nowhere to go all game. And for that game, I mean, it was a weird game. So it was 13-10. Wisconsin was leading in the fourth quarter. And then all of a sudden, like, Notre Dame gets a kickoff return touchdown, a couple pick sixes, and it ends up being, more of a blowout score than the game actually was. But for much of that game, like, he wasn't getting anything going in the running game, and Notre Dame wasn't passing the ball to him at all. And then all of a sudden it was kind of a blowout, and they had Chris Tyree in there, so he just like wasn't in the game at the end there, and they really weren't near the red zone or the goal line enough to give him carries to score. But I think like on a normal, if you look back at what he did previously, and I know Cincy's defense is pretty good, it's definitely going to be a tougher matchup than like say Florida State did, but I just think like the amount of like on a normal week, he's going to get around 20 touches and probably end up with 100 plus total yards with his receiving and his pass and his rushing, and probably find the end zone once or twice. So, I mean, if you're talking about like a guy that reasonably can get you 20 plus fantasy points hitting 5K, it's going to be hard to ignore him. I'm a little shaky to like fully go in on cash, but like, I mean, he should be popular, and I don't blame you if you play him, if you just lock him in. He was the first guy you locked in just from looking at his price.
And you mentioned that about Cincinnati's rush defense, and they've historically had this good rush defense, and they're only allowing 138 yards a game, 3.5 rushing attempts, but also they are allowing their 90th in opposing running backs fantasy points per game at 24.8. So you can score points obviously on this. And one thing I do like about Kyron is his receiving. I mean, he's only averaging 61 yards per game. I think you mentioned that. So, but he can make it up, when he's catching almost 40 receiving yards a game, and so he's still getting you close to 20 fantasy points a game, and he hasn't had that big game yet. So. Man, it just seems too cheap. It just seems dirty not playing Kyron Williams at 5K. I mean, to me, he's a stud. But he struggled, but it's like even talking like guys like Whitermeyer when he's now down tonight to 3.8. It's like this is like the last week I'm going to even try using these guys. I use these guys week after week, but I think Kyron Williams is too talented of a back to keep down at 5K. It's just.
Yeah, it's definitely an overreaction from last week because last week, and I think that. I don't know why I guess I can see why, but he was 5,700 last week against Wisconsin. And that was, maybe because it was like a low total game. It was, a tough matchup, and they took that into account. I never know what goes into some of these algorithms for the DFS sites, but the game before that, he was 7,200 and had almost 28 fantasy points. So there wasn't much of a reason, but like last week, I wasn't going to play him against Wisconsin. Even 5,700 is very cheap for him, but he was just kind of GPP and it paid off. He only got 33 rushing yards, and he even fumbled. So, but like from that price, I think from what he had last week, which was 3.3 fantasy points, that's why he's now 5K. Like I can see why he's 5K,
right?
But it's like next week. I don't even know what their schedule is next week, but he's gonna be 7K next week, or he should at least. So
and they don't have the greatest offensive line, so I mean, and it's only
no.
24 team total.
Yeah, it's tough, and like
there's reasons, I guess.
I think if you play Williams, you have to live with maybe not a great rushing day. If you're watching that game against Cincinnati and he's getting bottled up a lot, you kind of have to hope he's involved in the passing game. So that's like something you have to bank on in this, which is tough to fully trust in cash. That's what I was saying. So, but yeah, like he's very cheap, so I get it. By the way, so like this is the time we normally start up 10:30, so people are just tuning in. We did just go over the Alabama Ole Miss game. If you are wondering why we're not talking about that game at all,
we jumped over quarterbacks too. We're on running backs. We never talked.
We did, yeah. I think just we started we started out on running backs, but like quarterbacks are definitely in play. So yeah, like whatever. By the way, if you guys are watching, hit us up on the Discord, Fantasy Alarm Discord, just to get some questions in before lineup lock. If you have any roster builds.
Someone asked us about Fanduel. We can throw some Fanduel plays out there, I guess, too, as I'm just a big DK player. But yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not giving Fanduel much love here.
If Fanduel's tough, so like, I mean, I kind of blame FanDuel because they have the all day slate. So it's like, I'm not, we've talked about this on previous live streams, but I'm not going to play an all day slate with games going in deep into the night. That's just especially not what college. I want to do.
Especially college.
College with the news.
Scratched and
yeah. So, I mean, so what me and Pete do is just kind of break it up into the night and day playbooks on DFS Alarm. So if you're kind of trying to build lineups, you can take and pick from both of our playbooks there and kind of build that out. So one other, you mentioned the Tennessee, before we get to the quarterbacks here, I just wanted to touch on the Tennessee backfield.
Yeah.
Tyen Evans is splitting work with Jabari Small. And Small's very interesting to me at 4,400. I think he's way too cheap for being like kind of a co-starter in this offense, and then you see like Evans at 6,200. I think I'd much rather play Small. I think they're, in a normal game, they're going to split the carries. They're going to split the production. At 4,400 is like a little too cheap to ignore fully, in my opinion. I might even put playing him in cash. I don't know. How do you feel about that situation?
Yeah, and that's why I was curious to hear some of your comments, because I'm kind of on Small because Missouri could be one of the worst rush defenses in the country. They're allowing 271 yards per game on the ground. So
they're not great.
No, not at all. And I mean, and I like Evans. I mean, I think Evans is a great play, but I think they're both in play. I mean, they both ran well against Florida. They combined for 109, 22 carries. But if I had the money, you play Evans. I think he's probably the most talented play. But if you look, I mean, Josh Hopel likes to split carries between his runners, and it's been no different this year. And we see week 1 Small had 22 carries, Evans had 16. Last week each had 11. Evans has got the receiving touchdown, which is probably the one long receiving touchdown probably makes him 2K higher. But this Missouri defense is so cheap. I think a 4-4. I think a 4-4 Small could definitely be in a cash lineup, especially when you got, you want to start playing Beyonds, and Bryce Youngs or Corrals, and Tyler Baddies and stuff. I do wish Jabari Small being in a lineup.
Yeah, I do wish, like, I mean, going forward, anytime Mizzou is playing or on the slate, I'm going to be looking at their backfield, just because last week, I mentioned on the live stream and in the playbook even was Pat Garwo from Boston College, and he had a massive game.
Yes.
And I regretted not playing him in every lineup.
Me too.
So I think moving forward, I'm like, I remember just watching that game and just seeing his stats throughout the day, and I was like, all right, Mizzou's playing. I'm targeting their rushers against them because this is bad. And I think there's reasonable expectation to see both Small and Evans have big games and like both be fine plays. So I think if I'm choosing between the two, I'd just rather go small, just for the slight savings there. But both are like very much involved. Small had an injury a couple weeks ago, but he was back in there last week against Florida. 59 yards on 11 carries, had a reception too. And just for comparison's sake, Evans was pretty involved last week too, but they had the same amount of carries. Evans had the long touchdown reception, but besides that, like they kind of had the same amount of work. So, and that game, by the way, 67.5 over under Missouri, Tennessee. So that's like a game that's like sneaky on the slate. And let's go over to quarterbacks.
Well, actually, we have a quick question I just saw on our comments.
We do.
Opinions on Isaiah Pacheco.
Yeah,
I'm glad he brought that up because he's kind of cheap, and Pacheco's a bell cow, and Ohio State's a bad defense. So, problem is though they're going to be playing from behind. So I'm assuming they're going to be throwing, which gives me a little interest in Vidral a little bit, which I guess we get to in quarterbacks. I see you may have some interest in him, but Pacheco, I really think that. I think Pacheco is a really good GBP play. I do. I think he's going to go overlooked in this game, and he's going to get the touches. He's going to get the work. So that's a good question. So I'm not saying he's a main lineup type play, but definitely a sneaky GBP play. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. I wrote him up in the playbook as well. I wrote up all the three Rutgers guys that are cheap on this slate. Vidral, Melton, and Pacheco. And Pacheco for sure. I mean, like the Ohio State defense doesn't scare me at all right now, and especially the run defense has gotten torched numerous times. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Pacheco have a great stats day. But as you mentioned, the game flow is a little bit worrisome of how much work he's actually going to get. I mean, this game might be close throughout. And then maybe we see Ohio State pull away later in the game. So maybe Pacheco's in there getting 20-plus touches, and he could easily have 100 and a score. So, I don't mind the play at all at 4,800. And he's like this is another matchup where I'll be targeting Ohio State's run defense just because I've seen them getting torched a couple times now. So I don't mind it at all.
Look at your playbook. Pacheco and Small are very similar in pricing. The DK points per game. So I guess say you're going to go down with those guys. Would you play Small over Pacheco like in cash?
I think I would play Small, to be honest.
I probably would too because of the game script.
Yeah, the game script. He's going to be a closer game. And at a higher total too, 67.5 right now, and Missouri's only 2.5 point favorites. Yeah. Ohio State is still 15.5 point favorites, a 58 total. So just there, Vegas isn't implying Rutgers to score as much as the Tennessee offense. And Pacheco is clearly the guy for Rutgers backfield, which is
right.
Yeah, it gives him more guaranteed volume, but I just don't. The game flow is a bit worrisome for me. So, and also, I know like all the talks like, oh, it's like Ohio State has struggled. Are they still good? Rutgers, could keep this one close. There's also a chance like Rutgers isn't that good. And
right.
I know they played well against Michigan last week, but there's a chance Michigan isn't that good either. And Ohio State could, easily win by multiple scores, and it's kind of ugly for Rutgers offense. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think there's always that chance against Ohio State. So I would like to think I'm wrong. And actually, the wager alarm, if you're into betting and all that, I picked Rutgers to cover this game. I think it's going to be close than Vegas is saying. I mean, it could still be losing by 2 touchdowns, but they covered the plus 15 there. So, but anyway, let's go to quarterbacks. We touched on Bryce Young. We got Matt Corral. definitely the top two. Just to target overall in that game, Alabama, Mississippi. I think Malik Cunningham's definitely in play. You know, we talked about him last week with his rushing. He scored another 2 rushing touchdowns last week, and he's got 2 in every single game this year, which is insane. This game against Wake Forest is going to be probably a ton of offense on both sides, and Sam Hartman on the other side is another guy I'm looking at for sure. I mean, where are you going for your second quarterback if, say, you're playing one of Young, Corral?
All right, so this gets real interesting. I was even looking at like a drought earlier today, because if my thinking is if I don't go both the big studs, I'm going to go cheaper quarterback. And I'm not telling everybody else that played this, but man, you know, who I have a lot of interest in is Tanner McKee for Stanford.
Okay.
And I hope it's not like a Brandon Lewis move I did a couple weeks ago with using Brandon Lewis from Colorado. But McKee's 6'5". He's going up against, you know, I was watching some quotes earlier from Miro Cristobal from Oregon earlier this season, and he could not stop just gushing over McKee. I know his coach speak and all that, but he's saying that McKee is probably going to be the best quarterback that he's actually coached against in that league. And you know, you're talking about, you know, he's played against guys like Jake Browning, Gardner Minshew, you know, Slovis, Brock Purdy. I mean, but you look at McKee's actual stats. He completes over 2/3 of his passes, 67.5%. He's yet to throw an interception on a season. He's thrown 8 touchdowns. He ranks seventh nationally in QBR, and the kid can run. So you know he's 6'6", 228. He can run. He scored rushing touchdowns against USC, Vanderbilt. I mean, the kid's got control of that offense. He's quick. He's efficient. Maybe I like him too much. But 6'5", man, I like him today as a value play at quarterback. And you know, Oregon's giving up over 20 points a game to quarterbacks. So is he a cash play? Man, I don't know. I just feel like I'm not going to go Corral Young together. I'm going to go cheap and try to get some big running backs. But maybe I'm getting too crazy with it. But really, who else is there to go? Maybe Slovis. He hasn't had that huge game yet. He does have a good matchup against Colorado. A little bit interested in Des Ridder. You know, he's dual threat, but it's a difficult matchup.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I'm not playing Slovis. He's just what a dumpster fire for me.
Yeah,
I watched him last week throw 3 picks at Oregon State, and like
you be hating yourself. Yep, exactly. Basilic maybe.
Basilic. I think Hendon Hooker's interesting.
That was. I wanted to ask your opinion on that too, because we don't know what the story is though with him.
Yeah, this is a noon game, noon Eastern, so hopefully we get some news before the kickoff as to whether he's warming up, whether he's playing, and stay tuned in the Discord if that news is coming late. But
I haven't seen anything on him yet either. I think that's another sneaky play also that you could possibly use Hooker in a cash.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame you for doing that. There. Not at all. He's going to give you that rushing for sure, and he's definitely going to start over Milton if he's healthy, because I just think like Milton's had a little been banged up too, but I think that it's clear that Hooker's the better quarterback for that offense. So I like definitely him. McKee's interesting for sure. I don't blame you at all for going there. I like that play. I think the second quarterback range is a little tough. You know, you mentioned Noah Vedral. I think he's a good play too at 5,500. Maybe a little risky because it's, you know, a Rutgers quarterback going against Ohio State defense is probably out to prove something on this day here. I think
McKee has no ground game either. You know, no. So it's all an air game for him. I mean, he has no running backs to hand off to besides himself.
Yeah. He did McKee 42 rushing yards last week, though. I mean, I guess like a lot of it came on one rush. He had 30 on one play. Jared Dagey is interesting. West Virginia going against Texas Tech. I think that's a name to look at. If you're, I mentioned Sam Hartman, Connor Bazelak, both in that range. Desmond Ridder for sure.
Hartman's a good play.
I think like Ritter's probably going to get a ton of rushing in this game. I mean, maybe not yardage, but he's going to be running it a lot, I think, just because they're going to be desperate to win this game, and they're going to give the ball to him, have the ball in his hands, especially in the red zone, just to whether he's scoring it or passing it in the red zone. I think it's going to be him heavily involved.
I'm seeing the line moved a little bit in some spot where -2 in favor of Cincinnati. So
I think money's coming in. People are realizing, and this is another play, wager alarm best bets, if you want to check that out. I had Cincinnati on the money line. It was -120, I think. It's now at -130. So, I mean, I think Cincinnati's just a better team, in my opinion, than Notre Dame. And Notre Dame had a really tough matchup last week against Wisconsin. And as I went through earlier, it was a little weird game where they did not blow out Wisconsin. It was a hard-fought game. But Cincinnati's had a bye week. Like, they're ready for this game. So one kind of a side note on this, though, he is facing the former Cincinnati defense DC, Marcus Freeman. This is true, yep.
And how
might
much
have
does he
might
know?
have something up his sleeve for him.
Does he know Ritter's tendencies and all that? So
that's a good
side
point.
Note.
Yeah. That's why I think like Ritter's maybe just a GPP because there is some risk there. But I don't mind him at all. I mean, 7,500 is also probably the cheapest we'll see him all year. So
yeah, definitely.
Before we get to receivers, just wanted to shout out Dirty Dangle saying there's also quote, there's a chance Michigan isn't that good either, which is what I said earlier. And he said he's not wrong coming from a Michigan fan. So I guess Michigan fans agree that Michigan might not be that good. We'll find out. They're playing Wisconsin today, and if they beat Wisconsin on the road, then maybe they're good. So we'll find out there. So we got receivers here. We talked about the guys in the Ole Miss Alabama game, all of them in play. Mingo is out with a broken foot, so do not roster him. Outside of those guys, I mean, where are you looking for the top end? Like, if I had the money, which I don't in my lineup, I would put Drake London in there every time, but I just don't have the room to fit him. So, unfortunately,
I was just going to say that about London because, and you don't, but London is by far.
Yeah.
I mean, this game.
He's a stud.
He's the premier receiver in football, I think. He's a stud. Like I said, he's a target hog, 14 targets. He's a little banged up, but because he's getting 14 targets a game. That's why. He's not cheap, but, great GPP play. Kyron does slow down a little bit, but still, if you're making GPPs, you want to get London in some of your GPPs. But you're not going to be able to do it in cash. No way. Yeah. Unless you just, you dump the quarterback. So it's got to be a cheap day of receivers. And I think there's plenty of value here.
Yeah. Well, like let's get to some of that value. I mean, if you're going cheaper, I think like there's plenty of guys in this mid range. I mean, so Xavier Worthy's maybe the top of that for Texas. I mean, he's clearly going to be a main receiver for Casey Thompson in the Texas offense. So like but he's 6,200, maybe a little too pricey. Guys I wrote up in the playbook that if you want to check that out for more breakdown, Michael Mayer for Notre Dame, the tight end there, 5,500, kind of like Kyron Williams, just too cheap for what he is and his role in the offense. But the low total against Cincinnati is why he's this cheap probably. But I mean, I don't mind him in cash. He's gonna have a floor with his receptions probably. Ja'Quari Robertson for Wake Forest is a guy.
What's your opinion on Roberson? I think he's going to be chalky.
I mean, 5,200 is way too cheap for him. And he was $7K last game. And I'm not sure why he's this priced low. I mean, I think he's probably going to be very popular. So like I wouldn't mind him in cash at all. Yeah.
I mean, and he's had some. Everybody thought his Donovan Green was gone. Everybody thought he was gonna be the man, but he's still getting the targets.
Yeah, and Louisville's defense is terrible. So this is like a game where Wake the offense could be going overlooked here, like for DFS, I guess. I mean, they're favored in this game, high total, so like Vegas is expecting to score. But I think with like Ole Miss, Bama, people are going to look past some of these offenses that we should be targeting. Wake is one of them for sure. I mean, the Sam Hartman Robertson pairing is like very affordable and could go off. So.
And they're due. They're so overdue to have a big game.
Yeah,
so.
and the running backs, we didn't even touch on them, but like Beal Smith, I mean, he hasn't been great this year, but he could easily have 100 plus and a couple touchdowns in this one. Justice Ellison is a cheap guy in that offense that is like 4,300 in kind of the backup running back who's getting enough work that you can play him. But yeah, I mean, Robertson is a guy that I love on the slate for sure, and he'll probably be popular because people will see that price.
Yeah, he's probably a cash play at 5.2.
Yeah, other cash plays I think for sure, just because of how cheap they are. The Oklahoma receivers are interesting. We got Marvin Mims at 4,800, but I actually like Mario Williams at 5K over him, just because I think he's got a bigger role right now. And he's just got a better rapport with Rattler in this offense right now. I know Mims was the guy last year, and 4,800 is way too cheap for him. So like I can see why people would play him. So I don't mind it, but I would rather go Williams. I mean, I'm kind of on that train. I've wrote about him in playbooks before. I just think he's the better talent right now and a bigger role. So
the only thing that worries me about Williams is I was looking at Williams heavier this morning. He has got 4 targets every game, but I have seen his snap counts they've gone down every week. Now, is that a sign of anything? I mean, Hazelwood looks like Hazelwood still is seeing the most snaps. He gets 5 targets every game. I don't want to talk about Williams either, but that's the only thing that popped up on Williams to me where I've seen his snap counts decrease. But I think Williams is he's a star freshman, so he's the said I don't want to talk anybody off. I think he's a good play, and I played Williams with the first or second week there. We had a good game. So the only thing that popped up on me that made me take a step back a little bit on Williams. So
by the way, we have some news coming in. Hendon Hooker expected to start for Tennessee. So we were talking about that just a little bit ago about if he was safe to play or not. Is expected to start. I mean, he's been banged up, so like it's definitely a risk to play him, obviously, because he could get re-injured at any point. But so keep that in mind if you are rostering him. But a high total game against the Missouri team that's been terrible against the run, and Hendon Hooker's a running quarterback, so I don't mind that at all. The Bo Melton play at 4,900 might be popular. We talked about this Rutgers offense a lot, but I think like if they're trailing in this game, they're going to be playing. They're going to be playing from behind it and throwing it to Melton a ton. And I don't mind him as a cash play either. The Ohio State defense, as we mentioned, has not been the dominant Ohio State defense that we've seen before. So definitely room there. I think the 2 guys I wanted to mention real quick, Louisville's cheap guys. I wrote about Marshawn Ford in the playbook. He's only 4,700 still.
We're both Ford fans, I think.
Yeah. We talked about him on slates before. But Jordan Watkins is the guy. So Ford is the tight end. Jordan Watkins is the receiver. That's kind of their number 1 guy. And both are going to get a bump up now because Braden Smith is out for the year after he got hurt last week. So, I mean, both are going to get plenty of targets in this higher scoring game against Wake where they might have to throw it more. And both, I think there's only 2 guys I'd be willing to play, and they're both under 5K, which is Watkins and Ford from Louisville at least. So I don't mind those guys.
What's your opinion on Jalen Hyatt for Tennessee? 3.8. That's a tough receiving core, man. But before he got hurt against Pittsburgh, he was pretty much looked like the number 1. Came back last week, and then I don't think he had a catch last week, but he ran over 20 routes. Well, the team intended air yards, 83 total. I'm just saying price here. Tennessee's a fast team. Missouri defense is. as I'm looking at some of these cheap guys, where beside like a Billingsley, somebody who would be different to throw in there because you got to go cheap on receiver. That's just a name that popped up.
Yeah, no, I get that. The thing with me with Tennessee's receiving core is like it's so the targets and the work is so spread out that it's. I mean, like GPPs, you can play these guys. Like if I was gonna play any in cash, I'd rather just pay up for Chisholm. I mean, I know he's like the most expensive there, 5,200, but he's gotten the most proven work. I have to see it one more time from Hyatt. This season, like if it's today, okay, like I'll miss it today, but next week or the week after, I'll look back to him. And he won't be that much more expensive. I don't think if he has a good game, and he might just
he won't
5K range. So,
one other name. What's your opinion on Alec Pierce? He's another one. It seems like he's getting. I'm just looking at his price. I mean, he's leading the team in targets. But
I don't mind him for tournaments for sure because he's like, but the low total has me a little scared off, and I think like with how like low scoring this game is, I'd rather just look at the main guys from each team, which is Ritter for Cincinnati, and maybe Jerome Ford. But for Notre Dame, we talked about Kyron Williams a bunch and Michael Meyer.
It seems like Pierce every time I play Pierce, seems like he gets hurt.
Yeah, he just has not been trustworthy at all this year. And the Cincinnati passing offense isn't like one I've ever really targeted. I mean, maybe Pierce was like a guy, if they had a good matchup passing wise, but. I think like if they're in the red zone, they're gonna lean on Ritter running it. I think, or like the read option with him and Ford. So that's why I lean away from the passing attack for Cincinnati, and I usually do on these slates. I'd rather just go Ritter or Ford. But like I mean, like obviously tournaments, GPPs, you can play any of these guys.
Look at that. Ford's not a bad play. If you think about it, Ford only 470. He's probably Malik's favorite target, right?
Who's that? Watkins?
Ford, Marshawn Ford.
Yeah. I mean that's why I wrote him on the playbook. I was like, he's way too cheap. And last week he was 5. I think he was 5.5 or something. Like he should not be under 5K at this point. He really shouldn't. He's the proven top guy. And with Braden, as I mentioned, Braden Smith is out for the season. It's going to bump up him and Watkins.
That's right.
So
Ford's a sneaky play.
I think he might make my cash lineup because like it's weird because like it's when you compare him with like Braylon Sanders at 4,800, it's just like you can't not play Sanders.
Right. Yeah. But yeah. So again, going back to this 80 over under.
Multiple cheap guys. Like I don't mind Ford there for sure. Same thing with like Bo Melton, 4,900. If you're comparing him against Sanders, you're not going to play. You're not going to fade Sanders for Melton, but I don't mind if you play both of them in the same lineup. So I think with like as we mentioned before, all the high priced quarterbacks and running backs that we want to fit in, you might have to play multiple cheaper receivers. So that's the way that you probably have to go on the slate.
I saw a tweet about Trevion Henderson that Ohio State's going to start giving him at least 20 touches a game. I just saw it somewhere. It was a quote from a quote from the coach.
I think that should happen. I need to see it for
right.
Yeah, I need to see it for like in a competitive game. I know he's had a good game already this year, but like. That was against Tulsa. He had 24 for 277 and 3 touchdowns. But like, I need to see him get that workload in a conference game to actually trust him. Yeah. Yep. Because like the beginning of the season, it was Mayan Williams that looked like the better running back at times. So and Mayan Williams is still there. So like, I think this is kind of I know they probably want to give Henderson a ton of work, but it might be a little bit of a hot hand approach. So. It makes me hesitant. But
we have a question core plays for FanDuel. I mean, for FanDuel, I think the core play is going to be Bryce Young and Bijan Robinson. I think the way the price is on FanDuel. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I actually don't have that pulled up right now, but I think like similar to what we said. I mean, is Bryce Young the most expensive quarterback on there?
He is. Young is 11-2, Corral 10-5. It's a little bit closer. That's why I probably pushed to Young on FanDuel.
Yeah. If you could fit him in better, then I would rather go Young. Like if Young was, I wish Young wasn't 10K on this DraftKings slate. It's like so annoying because I wanted to play him, but you can't play him against when he's 10K when against like Corral's 9-2. It's just like the difference between them. By the way, before we sign off here, we didn't even talk about Spencer Rattler, which is embarrassing. Not for us, but for Spencer Rattler, that he's like that irrelevant to us right now.
And it is. And I was looking to throw him in like a GPP with with Marvin Mims just to do something, but we're not even talking about. He's not even in the cash conversation anymore.
No,
and this is the guy who was a number one. He was a Heisman. Number one for Heisman this year. Yeah, and he's not even on my radar. Of course, he's going to have that big game here, which could come today.
Yeah, you can easily have that. I'd rather play Casey Thompson at 8-4 over over Rattler.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Which is wild to say. I didn't think I would say that 2 weeks ago for sure. By the way, before we sign off, Hooker and cash or too risky is what Nelson's asking.
That's a good question, man.
Discord.
I think you may see Hooker get popular in cash. I'm afraid to use him, but
I think he's a little risky for cash. But he could, full health, which he doesn't have, but full health, Hooker's a great cash play on the slate. I think he's a little risky. That's the thing with college. You just don't know how healthy these guys are, which is always a risk, obviously. Yep. But in college, especially with when it's a starting quarterback and you're leaning on that guy versus someone else that could have 20 to 30 DraftKings points, it's hard to lean on it. Like last night, the whole debate was Jaron Hall being out, and if you're going to play Baylor Romney, and then Baylor Romney goes out with a concussion, and immediately you're like, all right, well he's got. I think he had 15 DraftKings points, but it's like, all right, he could have 30, but I'm not going to get that now. So it's all like that's the risk you're playing with these guys that come in with injuries or anything. But yeah,
and it's a good game. He's facing Missouri. They're giving up almost 300 yards, per game on the ground. He's dual threat, but I agree with you. I might end up with my Tanner McKee play, and so I just hope it doesn't turn into like my play with Brandon Lewis from Colorado. But I just feel you either go low or go up and spend your money on Young and Corral together. That's the way I'm looking at it.
All right. We'll end on that then. And we'll carry this over into the Discord chat up until lineup lock, which is in about an hour from now. If you got any questions about lineups, players, and all that, appreciate you guys all watching. Me and Pete doing this every Saturday morning. 10:30 will be the time next week again, and we'll be talking all day with you guys in the Discord. If you got questions about the night slate, go check out Pete's night playbook over at dfsalarm.com. Appreciate you guys tuning in here on Twitter, YouTube, wherever you are, and the Discord chat as well. Thanks for keeping the conversation going. Pete, have a good day. We'll be talking to the Discord.
All right, thanks guys. Good luck.
See you, everyone.